Take a deep breath. Do it one more time. Now, think about this, every breath you just took contains approximately 21% oxygen. It is an invisible gas. It has no color. It has no odor. We cannot see it. And yet, practically all life on Earth depends on it. Now, imagine an impossible, yet fascinating scenario. What would happen if, suddenly, all the oxygen on the planet disappeared? Not forever. Just for 10 seconds. It seems like a short time. After all, many people can hold their breath much longer than that. So, would anything serious really happen? The answer is far more surprising than you might imagine. In just a few seconds, the world would change so drastically that millions of people wouldn't even understand what was happening. Buildings would collapse. Airplanes would run into trouble. Sunlight would change. The oceans would begin to transform. And our own bodies would experience immediate effects. Today, we will journey second by second through one of the most extreme scenarios science can imagine. What would happen if oxygen disappeared for just 10 seconds? Let's begin. When we think of oxygen, we usually think of breathing. But that is only a small part of its importance. Oxygen makes up about 21% of Earth's atmosphere. The rest consists mainly of nitrogen, along with small amounts of other gases. Without oxygen, animals and humans could not obtain the energy our cells need. But its role goes far beyond that. It is part of the water we drink. It plays a part in countless chemical reactions. It protects the Earth's surface through the ozone layer. It makes combustion possible. It influences atmospheric pressure. And it even plays a role in the formation of many minerals. In other words, oxygen is present in almost every aspect of our lives. Imagine the clock striking exactly 12 noon. Without any warning, all the molecular oxygen in the atmosphere instantly vanishes. No one hears an explosion. No flash of light appears. There is no visible signal. But the planet has just entered one of the most extraordinary events in its history. In the first instant, you do not yet feel a lack of air. Your lungs still hold some of the oxygen you had just inhaled. However, the air you try to breathe can no longer provide any more. During the first second, most people would barely notice anything strange. Perhaps a slight sense of surprise. An instinctive attempt to breathe more forcefully. But the real problem lies not just in the lungs. It lies in the surroundings. The air has just lost a fifth of its composition. Atmospheric pressure drops suddenly. That change immediately affects our ears. Many people would feel a loud pop, similar to what happens during takeoff on a plane, but much more intense. While everyone tries to understand what is happening, the sky begins to look different. Oxygen plays a role in how the atmosphere scatters some of the sunlight. Although nitrogen remains the primary component, the disappearance of oxygen alters the air's optical properties. The sky takes on a strange appearance. The light seems less intense. Colors shift subtly. It wouldn't be immediate darkness, but the world would feel different. As if something invisible had vanished. Oxygen is essential for combustion. Without it, gasoline engines stop running. Candles go out. Gas stoves shut off. Fireplaces stop burning. Thermal power plants begin to fail. Controlled explosions inside millions of engines simply cease to occur. Cars come to a halt. Motorcycles lose power. Many generators stop producing energy. Silence begins to spread. One of the places where the situation would be most critical is the sky. Jet engines require oxygen to burn fuel. If the oxygen were to vanish, they would stop producing thrust. Pilots would have mere seconds to react. The planes would not fall like stones. They would continue to glide, thanks to their momentum. However, they would rapidly lose the ability to stay airborne. Most of them would not crash within just 10 seconds. Nevertheless, an extremely dangerous emergency situation would ensue. Surprisingly, your body wouldn't die in those 10 seconds. The blood still contains oxygen carried by hemoglobin. That small reserve keeps the brain functioning for a few moments. But symptoms would set in quickly. Dizziness, confusion, desperate breathing, an intense sensation of breathlessness, anxiety, and an immediate increase in heart rate. The body would try to compensate for the lack of the gas it needs to produce energy. Here, one of the most fascinating aspects of this scenario emerges. Water is composed of hydrogen and oxygen. If all the oxygen, even that which is part of water molecules, were to disappear, the planet would lose its oceans. But that scenario belongs more to the realm of extreme science fiction. In this exercise, we will imagine only the disappearance of molecular oxygen from the atmosphere. Otherwise, Earth would literally cease to resemble the planet we know. There is a detail that hardly anyone imagines. Many materials depend on oxygen. Concrete contains oxygen-bearing compounds. So do numerous minerals. If oxygen were to disappear from those chemical compounds, the consequences would be catastrophic. However, in our scenario, only atmospheric oxygen disappears. Even so, the sudden drop in atmospheric pressure could affect delicate structures. Very large windows, pressurized facilities, industrial equipment. Although buildings would not collapse immediately, much of the infrastructure would begin to experience problems. Exactly 10 seconds have passed. And just as mysteriously as it vanished, the oxygen returns. The air regains its usual composition. Engines start running again. Flames return. People breathe normally once more. But the planet is no longer exactly the same. Millions of vehicles came to a halt. Thousands of flights declared an emergency. Hospitals activated crisis protocols. Industries suffered disruptions. And millions of people lived through an experience impossible to forget. The good news is that, in a scenario limited to 10 seconds, humanity would likely survive. The bad news is that the economic and social consequences would be enormous. It would take hours or days for transportation to return to normal. Communications could be affected, markets would go into a panic. And scientists would spend years trying to explain what happened. It would be one of the greatest mysteries in all of history. We live surrounded by things we take for granted. Gravity, light, water, air. We rarely think about them. Until we imagine a world without one of them. This thought experiment demonstrates that oxygen does more than just allow us to breathe. It makes practically all of modern civilization possible. From the operation of a car to the flight of an airplane. From a simple candle to the chemical processes that sustain life. It is one of those invisible heroes working silently every second. 10 seconds might seem insignificant. But when we talk about oxygen, they are enough to remind us how delicate our planet's balance is. We live in a world where millions of processes occur simultaneously without us even noticing. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson. Earth is not just our home. It is an extraordinarily complex system, every molecule, every atom, every breath. It is part of a balance that has been functioning for billions of years. And that makes possible something we often forget to value. Life. If this scientific journey changed the way you view something as everyday as the air you breathe, don't forget to subscribe to discover more fascinating scenarios about the universe, nature, and the mysteries of science. And now, we'd love to hear your thoughts. If you could experience one of these hypothetical experiments for just 10 seconds, which one would you choose? Let us know in the comments. See you in the next video, where we'll continue exploring impossible questions that science tries to answer.